Okay, welcome to the, what are we calling this, a special meeting? Special work session of the Conservation Commission to review the proposed ordinance changes for Article 10, Environmental Protection Standards. This is something I worked on, I don't know, several months ago to kind of do a first stab at it, and also taking from Barbara's kind of list that she's been keeping over meetings and meetings of things that have just come up that we didn't really have in our standards that we, pie in the sky, wanted to someday. And then from there, Allison, Barbara, and I had a couple meetings where we kind of took all of our notes and went through this and did red line strikeout and then brought it to Kate and Peter, and we went over it again, and now we're here to review it with all of the Conservation Commission, which is
one more person.
Huge. So Abby, thank you
Could have
for
just
being
invited
here.
me along
I
to
know,
one of
right?
your regular meetings, apparently.
I know.
Well, then you'd have a quorum.
Yeah, then we could not. But
Okay, all right, that's true. Good point.
so, I mean, we can go through it point by point, but really, I think we should just, if people have questions on certain things or have certain things that they want to see added or think need to be taken back. There are a list of things that in our smaller discussions we have talked about, and you might not see them in here because for one reason or another it either wasn't quite ready to be in here, like more groundwork needed to be done first before it could ultimately, come into this ordinance, or more research needed to be done, or, it just maybe was too high for this first, what we're trying to kind of pass through. So, yeah.
So the only thing that I have is, I know that Peter said that he didn't like number 9.
Number 9.
And if we're going to strike number 9.
No, I didn't say that. I really like number 9.
Let the man speak.
Is this of the criteria, the additional criteria? Okay.
And actually, was it number 9 or wasn't it in a different location?
Is this the first page, 9?
No, you said you liked the fact that we had first page number 9 is to protect and improve the future of Portsmouth's
Yeah.
resiliency. You like that
Oh,
one?
you like
Yeah.
that one?
Wait, but before I had one possible amendment to that.
Yeah.
If we're going in order.
Yeah.
I said, and because this is, I have one question and then a change. So one change was, could we change it to assist in protecting the future of Portsmouth's resiliency? Because it's not going to be the only thing that does that.
Okay.
It's going to be one of many things, hopefully.
So what do you want to assist?
So strike protect and improve and
Yep.
replace it with assist in protecting.
To assist in protecting and improving, or just protecting?
I think just protecting. Oh, I guess improving, sure. And I guess improving.
Okay.
And that, the reason I like it there is because it's in the purpose section. And it's like, the ultimate goals of the ordinance. Sure, it's great. And we also, well, I support that. I guess where it gets down to implementation is where I had a little
Where's
heartache.
that? Is that the other number 9?
Yeah, that's the other number 9.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, this was, yeah.
The
Criteria
actual
for approval.
Criteria,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
All right, well, do we want to go to that right now, or do we want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, it's up to you, I guess. Whatever you-
I don't,
Might as well, right?
Well, we
So-
like everything else that's in here.
yeah,
of
do you?
course. I have other comments, but,
Yeah, so-
but since we're talking about this, it
Yeah.
makes sense. So this is 1017.5, number 9.
Yeah.
And so it says projects will demonstrate achievement of carbon neutrality using external greenhouse gas reduction methods to compensate for loss of carbon sequestration capability of the native vegetation removed. So if I'm a homeowner looking to put a shed in or a garage in the buffer, how do I do that? How do I demonstrate that it's going to be a carbon neutral project?
Well, to me, grass doesn't count, and so if you're putting it on grass, taking out grass, it's like, okay. But it's cutting trees, cutting shrubs, and it's really like when we get these requests for a parking lot in a forested area.
Yeah.
What could you be thinking of right now? Sorry.
Well, the one that
On
actually
Borthwick?
happened, which I
Yeah.
didn't realize.
That actually
We said
happened.
no, yeah.
On Borthwick? Yeah, okay.
But
Just
anyway,
asking Kate about that.
and then we also had another one from another project that they wanted to take an acre out of the air base and it was treed and they wanted to just make it a parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I would say is that the parking lot, so we have the ability to protect wetlands stronger than the state wetland protection regulations require. But we wouldn't have the authority to tell them not to cut the trees on upland areas through this ordinance. We'd have to come up with some other way to do that. And this kind of does that, which goes beyond the scope. If it does do what you're saying it does, I don't know if it does, but, because if you look at something as a project, and they have to be carbon neutral as a project, well, you're really focused on the wetland and the wetland buffer. So once you go outside the wetland and the wetland buffer, your authority kind of stops.
Yeah,
So-
but the thing is that why is our authority limited just to the wetland and the wetland buffer? Who's watching out for what's happening on the rest of the piece of property? You know, why are
I'm not
we-
saying that it's right or wrong, I'm just saying.
Well, I
that's
know,
what
but
the-
I mean, how do we, as a city,
Yeah.
prevent that from
Yeah,
occurring?
well, what you did was you strengthened the 50-foot, the 25-foot no cut, and made it 50-foot, and you strengthened the tree cutting to the whole 100-foot buffer. So by doing that right there, you're achieving what you want to achieve, or heading that direction,
In our
in the area you have jurisdiction over. Whereas this one is a blanket statement that covers everywhere that the project touches, and the project might only have a tiny little wetland, but you're saying you got to leave all the trees. And, you know, I just think I think the legal department would have trouble with this because there's no enabling legislation to allow us to do that.
Well,
Where there is, we should look at it. I think there's something, it's sort of a task for another time, is what can the Conservation Commission or municipalities do to protect stands of trees or forested areas or upland areas? And there's not as much as you would hope, but I think I'm not as up on it as I should be, but there's definitely things you can do.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if this could be part of site review? Like, could they put it in
It could be.
something like that? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think they could.
I just
they
think it
could-
needs to be somewhere.
I think the way that it would work as a starting point probably is some sort of measurement. We'd have to look at whether there's the ability to do something like that.
well,
physically do something like
I've
that.
got 3 or 4 different websites that'll enable you, depending on the type of tree you have, the caliper, you know, how
Canopy?
massive it is, to be able to calculate how much carbon that tree is sequestering. And then you can take that, how much carbon is being sequestered, and you can translate that into renewable energy output. Like, how much renewable energy can I put to compensate for this lack of sequestration?
So if you cut down the trees, you can put up solar panels?
Exactly. A solar carport. And the thing is that we don't
Oh, a
want
solar
any.
carport, yeah.
We don't want any trees cut down.
No.
But the thing is that if you're gonna cut down trees, like you're gonna make it, pave it and make it into a parking lot, then you need to put solar carport over it. Or you need to do something.
I think there's definitely room, that would be site review, because it reviews big projects like that. And we'd have to look at what would be allowed at the state level, but we can look at that. I think it's a good sustainability goal.
And then the
Something we
other
should think about.
option would be that if you're not gonna do something like that, what you're doing is you're gonna set aside a piece of land
Yeah.
that is not in conservation right now, that is similar. So if it's upland that you're cutting down, you're gonna preserve some upland somewhere. It's gonna be conserved, and not a piece of property that you know you can never build on anyway. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because we've got regulations that protect that, but it's these upland areas that are very valuable to the city that can be clear cut.
Yeah, and when I asked about, the 6-inch diameter, I wasn't talking about just wetlands, because I guess Kittery has a thing. A Kittery resident said, why doesn't Portsmouth have a thing where you can't cut down any tree that's over 6 or more inches in diameter? There are plenty of cities that have ordinances that you cannot chop down trees, no matter where the hell it is. And so I'm wondering, what do we do? It seems to be beyond our purview. I don't know why it would be as a Conservation Commission, but,
It's not beyond your purview per se, it's beyond the wetland protection.
right, it's
ordinance.
Article 10,
Yeah.
but it could be something.
Could be somewhere else the
that
city
we
regulates,
develop
yeah.
a whole set of other environmental standards
Yeah.
that somebody building has to meet, correct?
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
the state of Maine might have different
Yeah,
ways to do that. I know
Yeah.
Portland has the same thing, Portland, Maine.
yeah, Okay.
But we haven't looked into that, so we'd have to look into that and see where
okay.
that might be, but,
Well, I think as part of the climate action plan, I mean, we want to sustain the area
Yeah.
within the city that is treated,
Sure.
so.
Right,
for sure, I think it's an admirable goal. I just think we gotta be careful that we don't reach beyond what we're allowed to regulate here, and I think that's a little bit of a reach.
So is that something that you can look at, or someone can look
Yep.
at, to see if we can pursue that in another area of the?
For sure.
Okay,
Yep.
Like
so we'll
zoning.
just strike it here,
I think so.
okay.
I mean, I think it's good that you put it in the goals, and that's not as enforceable, but it's aspirational.
Right.
Um,
It's somewhere.
Yeah,
Um,
and well, it just
laying
brings
the
people back
groundwork.
to why you're doing this.
It's also super difficult to measure any carbon neutrality and sequestration. It's easy to measure what's been lost, but not what you get back. And sequestration is a big issue, especially with land, because land does capture CO2, but it's on a short-term cycle. And when you measure CO2 emissions, usually, sorry, technical, because
It's okay.
when you measure CO2 emissions, the IPCC measures them at 100 years, so it's GWP 100. And so when you offset, or when you want to offset and show neutrality, you have to show neutrality at 100 years. And the cycle for land is a much shorter cycle. It might be 6 months, it might be 2 years. It will go in and out and in and out, but you're not able to show that your carbon will still be there in 100 years. So
Right,
it's a
so
really
maybe carbon
difficult and
neutrality isn't
technical
the term that I should use, but the thing is that you can, depending on the tree type, depending on the diameter of the
Yes.
tree, depending on the crown of the tree, there are all these different things that you can actually calculate how much that tree is sequestering.
Yes, yes.
And then I saw other tables that show you, if you're losing that amount of sequestration, what kind of renewable energy would allow you to sort of compensate for that loss in sequestration. So, there could be other verbiage that we could use here, but the goal is the same.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's just the technical difficulty of getting there and the calculation methodologies that you'd have to, like, say, calculated with this standard based on this and taking that
Right,
into account.
right. And if anybody's interested, I have lots of articles about how to do this. So,
Well, and I think the goal here is saving trees, right?
Yes.
And green space, so it'd be a lot more simple for people to hear it, and you can't cut down the trees unless you do this.
Or I mean, we probably have it, but if you cut down one tree, you have to replant two.
Yeah, I mean, we have
No,
that.
we don't have, oh, in the
Well,
wetland, yeah.
In the wetland, yeah.
In the
100
wetland,
foot
yeah.
buffer.
Yeah.
This is, we were trying to get at kind of like the whole project area, not just
Yeah,
in the buffer,
yeah.
so.
So we'll research that
Okay.
and see what we can come up with, and see if there's any communities around the state that have done
I
anything
had
like that.
are we sort of jumping around, or is there a
Yeah,
follow?
that's
Okay, the fertilizers, 10 point,
add something?
10,
Hold on.
18.
Abby, one's that Barbara just had something, just one we were just talking
Sorry.
about.
Sorry.
Yep, nope.
And I could have come back to
I
it.
was busy looking, I
Go
didn't
ahead.
look up, I was busy reading, so, go
Before
ahead.
we leave this topic, yes.
So Peter, too, you might want to check, because there is, like, the Stormwater Center was coming up with equations of giving credit for water quality too in trees. So they were giving a value to undeveloped land versus developed land and looking at the trees and giving sort of a point system for that, for the MS4 permit. So,
For filtration by the trees,
yeah.
respective of each type of tree.
But, yeah, if you had a regulation that you would get credit for that, if you, so,
So a tree retention regulation or something like that would
yeah. And the
get credit for your
canopy and
stormwater
everything.
permit or something?
Yeah. I can find out more about it from Sally if you want.
Yeah, I mean, if there's example, model regulations of state that work in the state, that's what we're looking for, because we have to, my understanding is we can be stronger on our wetland protection than the state. But I don't know what we can do beyond that, and this is wetland protection, so it could be something that goes outside of this.
Could help it anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
The fertilizers, 1 and 2 seem to.
Contradict each other.
What?
They contradict each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Where are you?
On the bottom, well, 10.18.24, fertilizers is the topic. It's right below the wetlands changing graph that you,
Yep.
there's no page number,
Yeah,
sorry.
so, and the thing is that if we're asking people to follow NOFA standards as part of our criteria, we can't have we can have the use of any fertilizers prohibited in a wetland or the limited cut area, I think, but I think that if people are going to use fertilizer, then the second one applies. You know what I mean? I don't think that we can say or wetland buffer completely.
Number 1 says nothing in the
Prohibited.
wetland or the buffer. Number 2 says only low phosphate are allowed in the wetland buffer, so they contradict each other.
Right, because we changed number 1.
I'm all up for number 1, but
Well,
Well, wait until you see my property and then say my fish food fertilizer is not a good idea in my garden.
yeah, I think the original intent was to have the wetland not have fertilizer, and then the wetland buffer strip
okay, so just take out
have
the
fertilizer.
red or wetland
And
buffer
the
out of number 1.
Wetland buffer strip was 0 to 25,
And now it's 0 to 50.
and now it's 0 to 50. So do we want to keep that language, the buffer strip, and then leave the second part, or do you want to just do away with, I mean, if we say no fertilizer at all, then what is NOFA
Right.
going to do, what are people going to do with, we can't say that, then that's a conflict a little bit, because you're saying you can use NOFA, but you can't use fertilizer, so.
Well, I'm saying the use of any fertilizer is prohibited in a wetland, period.
Okay.
And then we go on to the
And the
second
buffer
one.
allows for the NOFA standard.
Yes.
So
Should we change it to NOFA?
No.
Leave it like it is.
take out wetland buffer out of number 1.
Use of
Yes.
fertilizers, yeah, but then the second one, use of fertilizers other than low phosphate and silurious nitrogen is prohibited in any part of a wetland buffer?
Okay.
So we allow the low phosphate and slow release nitrogen?
Well, I don't know, where do we talk about the NOFA standards?
In our criteria.
Criteria for approval.
It's one of the addition to the 6 criteria.
Because, I mean, we bring that up every time anybody comes before us now.
And I have another question too
By
about
the
the
way,
same
we were
area.
just looking at,
It's number 8.
it's
yeah.
number 8, yeah, it's like right
It's right there.
Yeah, it's 1017.58.
Yeah, I mean, the
So I want to
problem,
put compliant with NOFA standards
sorry?
in that
That's what we're-
1018.
That's the question.
Yeah, I would support that, but.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. No?
so the only problem is that, so this is specific and the NOFA standards is not as specific. I mean, it's many pages of information and different BMPs. So it would be nice to have both somehow, like have, you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
I know they
Do
all.
these, does this work in NOFA? Low phosphate and slow release nitrogen?
I thought so.
Yeah,
So
thought
can't you just add a comma where you keep low reduced nitrogen, comma, compliant with NOFA
In
standards?
compliance with
Yeah.
NOFA standards? Maybe we say
Is,
that?
Yeah,
is
just do
prohibited
that.
in any part of a wetland buffer.
Go back and
Or-
double check.
Yeah.
NOFA
Yeah, the only
standards.
thing is that I'm not sure that NOFA says anything specifically about a wetland buffer. That's the thing that concerns me here. I think
But
they,
if you,
Yeah, but it's a fertilizer.
yeah,
site.
yeah, I
Yeah,
guess,
say it.
yeah.
Abby,
So
you-
the use of fertilizer other than low phosphate and slow release nitrogen fertilizer is prohibited in any part of the wetland buffer. The way that's worded is kind of funny, too.
Just add and will be in compliance.
well, I think if you put it, so other than low phosphate and slow release nitrogen fertilizers in compliance with NOFA standards, do you put
There you
it
go.
there?
Yeah.
is prohibited in any part of a wetland buffer.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Extra clouds.
Nicely done. When am I?
Great.
Anything else, Abby?
I had another one. Oh, next section, 25, flip the page from the fertilizers. The pesticides and herbicides. Is it possible to be more, like, does that include rodenticides? Because I never hear people use rodenticide and pesticide as a synonym or.
Yep.
Seriously, pesticide should cover it all.
Yep, think so?
Should they? I
They
mean, and-
totally do.
okay. And
Okay.
Pesticide is the only word.
that's what I thought, but then
Okay.
people
But-
keep manipulating those words to make them fit how they want. So, okay, cool.
Okay.
Should we add a note?
And
to
that
be
includes
explicit?
any spraying for mosquitoes and ticks, correct?
Well, no, it says if it's an application by a public agency for public health purposes.
Okay, so
But not,
if I'm a homeowner and I'm paying somebody to come and spray my property, that is not,
If you're in a wetland, right?
Because that's
in
not
the
a
buffer,
public
in the
agency.
wetland or the wetland buffer.
okay, because like 89 Sparhawk, that came up, and I was like,
Mosquito
I did not
squad.
know that was happening. And it does, but it has happened around in prior years down the block. And then,
It happens.
you know, they say it's, okay.
So can we leave this? The only reason I say to leave it is because even though we all understand pesticides is a blanket term, some people don't, and they might think, oh, it's not pesticide, it's an herbicide. I can use
Well,
Roundup.
leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
You know,
I
but
say
I
leave
mean,
it.
I don't know if we want to be
in
exhaustive and say
parentheses you wanna say-
rodenticide or any,
Well, I
You
think
could add
that
some
covers
kind of
pesticide.
definition. If you could take off herbicides and then put a definition of pesticides includes herbicides, rodenticides, and whatever else you want to do that, to make it
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah,
We could
'cause-
we could define pesticide.
Yeah.
yes.
definition
If,
section?
yes, exactly. That's
Are they
what
at the
I
end of
was,
this section or are
thank
they
you.
in the-
That's-
They're back in the definitions.
Is that Article 15?
Yep.
The definitions are.
And
So it would be bold and it would say pesticides and we'd come up with a definition. Okay.
is there,
well, the other thing I don't think we actually define, and I could be wrong, maybe I just didn't find it, was limited cut area? Or not limited cut area, we define that, it's the, what is limited cut? What do you mean when you're saying limited? Can I take out every other shrub, or? what am I
Limited cut area
Yeah.
is a specific area. It was 50 to 75 feet, and we're changing it to 50 to 100.
I understand,
That's the
what-
area.
I understand geographically what it is, but what does it mean, limited cut? Does that mean that you cannot cut in the limited cut area? Because then you should
Well,
say,
it's used to use when it's referred to in the ordinance below. So what things are allowed in the limited cut versus the vegetated buffer strip?
do you have a section?
I'm looking.
There is, yeah. It's
I mean, I know you do, but does anybody know what it?
1018.2, and there's a table. Limited cut
In the
area.
vegetated-
Well, the width, it shows the width of the areas.
right, yeah,
Doesn't show
Vegetation.
we have that, but,
vegetation cover or like.
Right.
yeah,
So
but
it
I mean,
used to
like, when
say-
you're saying
so
limited
in
cut,
number-
you're
You need to
allowed
define
to
it.
cut a certain amount in that area, is what it indicates to me, but it's limited. But where are we defining
So
what
in-
your limit is?
In number 1018.233, it used to say, the removal of more than 50% of the trees greater than 6-inch diameter DBH is prohibited in the limited cut area. So it was used, it's just used to define an area.
Okay, so now we're saying.
If we don't have anything that refers to the limited cut area, except the table that shows what the limited cut area is, we probably should add something that says,
So what you're asking is there a
Yeah.
percentage value? Like
Exactly,
50% or 40%? Or
Yeah, so we're
is-
saying we can't remove any trees, but can I go in and cut everything else down?
Yeah.
well, it's limited cut, meaning you can't cut,
Cut anything under
you can
6
cut anything
inches.
that's not 6 inches.
Everything, 100%.
Well, that's what it says now.
I know, that's why I'm saying,
That's what I
I
don't
think
like.
that's not,
I think the idea was to keep the big trees.
Right.
But don't you want also
I would like to
keep the
keep more
undergrowth
than
and
big
things
trees.
like that?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
And
not
have
saying
people
one's
not
right or
plant
wrong,
a
I'm just saying
lawn
what
in
it
it?
said.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we do need to define it if we do want it to be less than
Or-
100%.
Yeah.
And no more
Yeah,
than
but then how do we
50% of
say-
vegetation or something? I don't, you know, I don't
Yeah,
even know.
right, I mean.
Vegetative cover, I mean, that's.
Yeah.
Do we just get rid of
So,
limited cut?
I think, if we keep it, I think that we should have a number 4. And put under their removal or cutting of vegetation, limited cut area is limited by, or restricted to 50% of non-trees, or something. I mean, I don't,
Just expand the no-cut area to 100 feet?
50% of vegetation less than 6 inches.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Basically.
250 foot.
So do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone has a forested area and they want to clear it, so it's just the big trees that are left, it's going to turn into a park area, so it's going to change the landscape
Yeah.
feature. So if they want to do that, maybe they can do that with half their property, but not all their property. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
I mean, just. in the
Hard to
quick-
define, right?
It's
Hard
hard.
to enforce,
It's
hard to-
arbitrary, but
It'll be
you
hard
have
to define, hard to
You
enforce.
have to have, it's, at this point, it's an opinion. I mean, you have to like put a guardrail, and then if people push back a lot or not a lot, maybe, if they push back a lot, maybe we've gone too far, and if they haven't, then, hey, it
Right.
works.
Yeah.
But you have to put a limit, and just, at this point, it's an opinion about, let's try and keep it that way as much as possible.
No, I agree, yeah. Try. So that's a number 4?
I don't think it's number 4, I think it's right in number 3.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Just seems to make it go on forever, and are people going to read the whole paragraph?
Well, yeah, because number 3, though, is talking about the whole 100-foot wetland buffer, and our 50% of non-tree vegetative cover, we're saying is prohibited in the limited cut area, which is different, a different,
I think this might need to be.
Geographic area.
Oh, sorry, Sam.
no, so I was just trying to find a word.
What if we say, 1/2 of the limited cut area shall be left undisturbed? I don't know if that covers it completely, but
Or 50% of?
50%.
Yeah.
I think we've defined the surface, the limited cut area is 50 feet. We haven't defined what limited cut means.
I think that's what we're
That's-
trying to do.
Well,
That's what this
Yeah,
is, that's what
why
this
we
is
need to
doing.
have it.
50% of the limited cut area, well, how did you put that, Peter?
Well, limited cut is
Shall be left
defined as
undisturbed.
The vegetation, or, oh,
Yeah.
The limited cut is
limited cut is
50,
defined as
100.
50% left undisturbed.
And no trees greater than 6 inches diameter
Yeah.
taken.
Yeah.
Or not, it used to be half, right? Now it's none.
Yes.
Removal of any trees greater than 6 inches. The removal of any trees in the wetland buffer is discouraged. And removal of trees greater than 6-inch diameter in breast height is prohibited in the 100-foot wetland buffer,
Right.
unless an arborist. But isn't that saying conflicting things?
No.
If it's discouraged and it's prohibited, it's just
Yeah, but
prohibited.
any trees, I mean, you could have a 3-inch caliber
Oh,
tree.
any trees, got it, okay, got it. That's, then the last clause is 50% of the limited cut area should be left undisturbed. Okay.
Does it need an actual definition section thing,
I don't think so.
So it's anything less than 6 inches diameter, is what we're saying?
Yeah, we have it in here.
Yeah, 50% of the limited cut area will be
We do
left
have a definition
undisturbed.
for the vegetative buffer
So we've
strip.
already told them that they can't remove any trees greater than 6 inches. And that means that some trees that are 3 inches
So
are going
we're-
to have to be left.
So the vegetative buffer strip does have a definition, it doesn't say the
We'll need a
distance.
definition,
And then let's see if limited cut has it.
because I'm confused just talking.
It's not bolded, so I would think it wouldn't, but I should check. No. There's no definition for limited cut area.
So
We're saying-
the
we're
limited
saying
cut
limited-
area is a region.
Yep.
And within that region, you're allowed to only take out 50% of the vegetation.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much, I mean, that,
Excluding trees that are
Trees.
more.
and you can only take
Yeah,
out,
so that still
and you
stands.
can't take out any trees bigger than 6 inches.
Trees is a compound.
Should we say remaining vegetation or something? Because the equation's going to be all, including the 6-inch trees, if we don't. Right?
If 50% of the trees are left, 50% of the big trees are left. Or all the big trees are left.
All the big trees are supposed to be left.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
This is going to be very hard to enforce,
it is going to be really hard, but.
the 100-foot wetland buffer. Do we want to go to 75 feet? Give people some ability to cut some of their trees in the buffer?
I mean, I don't think that makes it any easier to enforce, though. I mean, it's still,
Well, trees that are up against people's houses that are completely in the buffer,
yeah, but
you're saying you can't cut them down unless
No,
you have an
'cause that could
arborist
be a
saying-
And get an
hazardous.
arborist to
That
come
could
in
be a
and say that's a
hazardous thing.
hazard.
yeah.
I guess so. Okay.
I mean, look at the one on Newcastle Ave that we
You guys
went
are all
to.
now deputized.
Yeah. Look at the house that we went to on Newcastle Ave where there's a tree that they're cutting down that's like right next to the house. That would
Yeah, you
be
could, I suppose,
contentious.
but I guess it
Well,
would be
Also, a
hazardous.
lot of properties have been pretty well stripped already, so, I mean,
I don't
they're-
know.
so, you know,
Save your
anything we
judgment.
can save going
I
forward.
don't know about
right?
that.
The only thing else that I want to say is that on our property, which is 100% in the buffer, my husband is an arborist. If we have a dead branch in a tree, we'll take that dead branch out of the tree to preserve the tree, you know what I mean? And so I'm just hoping here that when we say, okay, we're saying removal, we're not just saying cutting, okay? Because you can prune a tree to make it healthier.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that's restricted.
I don't
Okay.
think,
I
The
would,
removal of the tree. You could put a note in like.
You know, that would be in the definition of the limited cut area. Maybe we should create the definition of limited cut area,
say pruning is okay.
just to describe what you're looking for in that area in a
Yeah.
more context. And then you could say, well, it doesn't say it here, but if you look at the definition, it says you can prune, you can remove invasive species, you can use NOFA standards to make things healthier.
I think it would make it clearer.
yeah.
I think
Have
so.
a
The
separate
definitions are good,
definition.
I've- yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But again, you do come back to how do you enforce it?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
because the only time we check is really when there's a permit.
Right,
or
when
when
there's a
somebody does an
project,
application.
Or the neighbor
Or somebody
calls.
does something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I keep
Just-
walking past a huge project on Newcastle Ave, and I'm like, they're completely digging up the wetlands. I haven't seen the application, but it was probably 2 years ago because it's now being built. But I am wondering, call it in.
Call it in.
Email Kate. I
Make
do
sure
that all the
they have-
time.
And if they're in the wetland.
Look at this snow pile. It's behind a sign that says no snow.
All right,
Yeah,
so we'll create a
there is the
definition.
question of enforcement.
So in the
Yeah,
definition,
if it's an enforcement issue, then let us know.
you may want to say for the health of the vegetation or something like that, because there's
Someone
that.
want to take a stab at that?
The entire definition.
Okay, so what do we want to say in the definition? The health?
Yeah, just to avoid that, like prune the whole tree,
Lollipopping.
lollipoping or something
For
like
view,
that.
for view.
Yeah,
People
for
do that.
view or-
Yeah.
So it dies.
You can prune the tree, but you can't prune it too much? Is that what I'm supposed to say?
Yes, Peter.
The goal is for the health of the tree,
For the health of the vegetation.
or something like that.
Health
Yeah,
of the habitat.
Lollipopping is not.
You could say something like
tree.
pruning trees, removing invasive species, and generally tending to the health of the limited cut area is
Acceptable.
accepted or
Don't get crazy.
You
not.
can, you
not
could say pruning
prohibited.
dead limbs or something. I mean, you could be
Yeah.
specific like that and just say only pruning of dead limbs or dead.
I have
whatever
gotten calls
would
from
be-
people about pruning
I don't
before.
know.
You say that, but the thing is
Then
that
I know.
we have wires because we're way back
Oh,
off the road.
right,
and
right.
So
And
we
you gotta keep
have,
the wires clear.
yeah.
Yeah, right. I got you.
There's
Okay.
all
No,
sorts of
that's good.
reasons to prune.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Are we good enough with that section?
Yep.
And we're good with the table where we boosted everything?
I think that's a big change, the table where you boosted everything. I think it might be a challenge to enforce, it might be a challenge for people, and the planning board and the city council have to agree to. But it's something we can explain, and is everybody clear on that? Did you guys, Stuart and Abby, get a chance to look at that table? That overall, the vegetation management table changes things quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, me,
Saw that.
I
Okay.
go to 250, but no, I'm working with so you're lucky I'm not pushing anything more.
Well,
I'm keeping my mouth shut.
You know, I don't think anybody else was here when the wetland ordinance was passed. And I have to tell you that we really wanted 125 feet. And there was no way it was going to happen. They were all pushing for 75. So to get 100, everybody that was against it. And there were developers, basically, people that developed properties in the city of Portsmouth. And there were a lot of people that developed properties in the city of Portsmouth at the time that were on the city council. So you can understand how that was very difficult to try to get it through. Anyway, so we felt like 100 feet was a win.
What else do you have, Peter, that you?
Well, I have one
questions?
important one.
Yep.
I have, maybe they're all important, but I'm trying to put my thing back in the right shape. It's the wetland protection plan.
What
section.
number?
That's what I'm looking for.
Location? Oh, thank you.
1780.
10, 10, 17,
10, 17, 80.
80, yes. This is a specific approach for people with a lot of houses, like a manufactured housing park.
Yeah, it was done for.
And there's
the
only
one.
one
Right,
that has
on
it.
Route 1.
And I guess I'm wondering about changing the definitions in here, because we've kind of came up with a plan for them going forward we've already made. I don't know if we can go back and change that for that one park.
Well, but the thing is, we were trying to make it compliant with the rest of the ordinance, where we had defined
I know,
areas.
but I'm saying we have an I'll have to check with legal. I feel like it's an agreement we have with them on how we did it, and to go and change it now is like taking a contract and saying, we want to change this clause that we've already
They've
agreed
just
to.
been, can't they just be grandfathered? I mean,
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
any
but I mean,
future
like,
one.
so that's for people that have this situation existing currently. Those are grandfathered, but moving forward,
Yeah.
this could apply?
That's what I'm thinking. I just wanted to
Okay.
bring it up as
Okay.
as an issue.
No, I think we
Yeah.
have to I don't know if we need to write it, but.
We probably don't need to write
This
it.
only
I just-
applies to new applications.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think that's-
what I think. I'm going to
That's
check
fair.
in with the legal department on that, but I'm pretty sure that is what will happen. What other things did I have?
On that grandfathering note, I had it in my notes, I was going to maybe table it, but I don't know how this would work at all. But you know how some clearing has been, people cutting into, say, salt marshes and whatever because they've mowed, they can keep mowing. Is there any way in which we can legitimately or whatever say that when the property gets sold to another pair of hands, another property owner, that things need to revert back to whatever? Now, if it's treed, that'd be a little harder. Not mowing a salt marsh is easier, but is that out of our?
I think Barbara's been trying to do that with like putting some things in the deed, but it's only if they come in front of us to get a permit. So it's, if they've never come in front of us for a permit, I'm like, I don't,
There's no way to enforce it
I
or
don't think
anything like
so.
that? Okay. I mean,
and I don't even know
but-
about the deed thing, like if that's even actually happening out of, after we say anything, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. It just struck me while I was reading
Yeah, because
reading
we
it.
definitely talk to the applicants about if an application comes in front of us and we see that, we
Right.
definitely like try to have them.
It's
from
it's
and
mostly
not
people
in
that
our
are doing
purview, but-
developments. It's not necessarily people that just are owning a single house. You know what I mean? I think that it would be really hard. I know that my stomach would churn a lot when we would get, like the Woodlands. The whole thing was built in a
Yeah.
wetland. And we would, basically have people that would want to come in and put a deck on or put a shed up or whatever, something, and it's very difficult to say, you bought this piece of property as something, and now this piece of property has got to be different.
Right, well, I was sort of thinking it in terms of like septic, you know, like when you get, if you have to get it tested, I don't know what New Hampshire does, but in Mass, before you sell property, you have to have a perk test, or your septic has to get, tested. And I was kind of thinking, well, what if every time somebody sold their property, those things, like to be able to put it on the market in the city of Portsmouth, you'd have to have the drawings done for what is wetlands, what is, and it sort of goes to like what Jess was saying the other time when she was like, wow, I didn't even know any of this.
Yeah.
So it'd be a requirement that the owner has to supply, the seller has to supply the buyer with the information, and that, and jumping off of that, it would be, and you have to restore it back to what it was originally,
Yeah.
unless you go before the zoning or conservation commission to get permission to whatever. And
I like
know,
the
I know,
first
it's-
part, I think, is great, like, either education-wise or getting it, like, official.
Yeah.
The second one, I think, is gonna be.
Right, that's reaching for the
Because
stars,
when
I
you
know, but
buy
I
a-
thought I would
Yeah,
mention it, because
yeah.
why not? If you don't reach for the stars, you're never gonna get them.
But you buy the property as is, and then you're told, no, you actually have to let that regrow, because
Right, but
you'd be
if
told.
the buyer
Sure, you'd
knows
be
that, I mean,
told,
you
yeah.
know, if you're buying property, you know, you need to get a perk test, and you need to get a well test, and you're not guaranteed any of that.
Yeah.
You know, and you're usually buying land without a well, so I'm thinking, you know, city,
Well, I would
pretty
think
cushy for
that
getting
should
these-
be like part of the, I know that if you buy a house and there's something that the realtor that you bought the house from didn't tell you about the house.
Yeah.
That you
They're
can
liable.
sue them.
Yep.
They're liable.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with, if somebody bought my house, they would have to be told that it's completely in the wetland buffer. So if there's anything that you want to do on this piece of property
Right.
that is not just planting something,
Yep.
then you've got to
I
get
think
an
that's,
additional use
I think
permit.
that's fair, and that's actually fair to the buyer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's best for the
Let
buyer,
them
because,
know.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's better for
You
everybody,
cannot make any,
and it protects the land.
build any additional structures
Well,
or
you'd
things
hope
like
the
that.
realtor would disclose that. They should know if they work in
Well,
this
like
town.
No,
that
they
one-
don't.
No,
But the one on
because
Christina
because it's a
Road,
big
the
sell.
pool,
Yeah.
I put an offer in on that place, and I went to the open house, and I did all that stuff, and not once, I mean, I knew, but not once was anything mentioned about the wetland buffer, anything. And it was so, like, plain as day it was out there.
For you, yeah.
For
but
me.
for anybody else,
Yeah.
it's not.
Right.
And I think
But I
it's a
could
good
hear
thing
people
to
talking
have
around, be
that
like,
in
oh,
there.
we could extend this yard. I'm like, no,
Yeah,
you can't, no, you can't,
Yeah,
but like,
I don't know where that would be inserted in the process.
I
Like, we
know.
don't play a role in the purchase of land.
yeah.
Even the city doesn't. They play a role in taxing it, but I suppose it could be created through some real
Yeah,
estate
well,
transaction
I
process.
think it's educational.
Definitely
You know, it's the
educational.
same thing with anybody that does landscaping in the city of Portsmouth, anybody that removes snow in the city of Portsmouth, anybody that's selling property in the city of Portsmouth. I think there are certain rules that need to be,
it's a transparency issue.
Yeah.
Of which, you know, there's a lot of that in buying, well, anyway.
Yeah, but I
I
think
know I've gotten us
education
off track. We
definitely
need to go at 4:30.
would be easier and a first step, and then,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the bare minimum, so with the wetland update that we're doing, the wetland scientist that's doing the redelineation, part of the contract for that whole grant is that at the end of this, we're gonna be sending out mailings to everybody that's listed in the new
Use the existing people. there.
buffers and in the wetlands. And with that, we can design maybe a flyer or some educational piece around that. And then maybe we could do something with the website that is either on the Concom page or somewhere even more obvious in the planning department page that clearly states instructions how to find out if your property's in the buffer.
Yeah.
Go to MapGeo, here's how to click wetland layer,
Yeah.
call this number if you have any questions, because it's not really that, like,
Does any-
obvious how to turn on the wetland layer. in
Yeah.
MapGeo.
Does a buyer have to go through the town at any point?
Yeah.
Like, what information, or do they
The
get anything
assessors.
from the town when they, say I come in, I buy a property and it's in.
You don't have to.
And how do am I ever told?
You don't
Or
have to.
You don't have to. Yeah.
Like any law,
And that's
you have to
where-
just know that it exists.
You have to do your own research.
Yes, the law says you have to be aware of, yeah.
I mean, it would be nice. I think the education piece is the way to get at it, but I don't know if there's another way. It would have to be through some real estate disclosure thing, which, you know, like they've added for lead
That's a
and they've
big thing,
added,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, just another thing to sign.
but out of
Or
the
you
scope,
don't
out of the
need-
scope of this project.
Yeah, but the thing
Throwing
is,
out another-
I agree with what
I
Kate
got
is
another
saying. that
edit.
if
You want
just
an edit?
said-
Yeah,
Okay. I'm trying to keep you on
this is
track.
good.
Yeah.
Well, someone else can take over at 4:30,
Okay,
it's fine with
15
me.
So
I have to leave. at 4:30.
in 10.17.5 criteria for approval, the wetland boundary markers will be permanently placed on site to educate the community on sensitive wetland habitats. I just said on site to mark the wetland or wetland buffer as appropriate.
Okay.
Actually, on that one, I was wondering, we've several times told individuals that wetland boundary markers are available at the city hall. Can we add it in there? Like, or is that only for individual
Fine.
property owners or?
No,
Just to make
anybody.
it easy, like, these wetland boundary markers are available at the city wherever, and you can get them for
Right,
X.
because we want them to use ours.
Yeah.
Want them to use
for
it.
So let's
everybody,
put it in there where you can get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how did you change the wording, Peter?
Yeah, say that again, Peter.
I just added, so wetland boundary markers will be permanently placed on site to, and then I added mark the wetland or wetland buffer as appropriate, and then to educate the community on sensitive wetland habitats. Maybe to assist and I don't know, I think I said and assist the community on sensitive wetland habitats. But we can add wetland
And
boundary
then you add,
markers available.
they're available at City Hall,
Yeah.
whatever.
I think
Yep.
that's good.
Available in the
In the
Portsmouth Planning
department.
Department.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. What do we think about the 10.10.17.27, the wildlife stuff?
10, 17, 22. Okay.
I think it's great.
Okay. 10.10.17.46, adding a new thing under conditional use approval. Which this,
Yeah, I thought about that one. I don't have a problem with it. I guess I'm,
Oh, no.
it just seems to be.
they're coming for a wetland conditional use permit, so they're asking for relief. So,
We hear it a lot, though. We're saying like, oh, we're so
Yeah, but-
constrained on this property because of all these things. And it's like, well, we are also a constraint that I would say is on equal playing field with these other ones. And I feel like because some of these are more, I don't know, they're in deeds and they're, you know, ordinance specific to view corridors and utility easements that like, oh, well, the wetland one, like, that's not as big a deal. You know what I mean? And I just
Yeah,
want to
no, I
kind
get
of
it.
show that
I
if
get
we're
it.
on equal playing
yeah,
field with these other.
yeah, that's why I left it
things.
alone. I
Okay.
think it's fine.
Great.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else?
I know, this is city thing, not, more of a lights, because you talk about limited lighting and stuff, and I was
Yep.
like, yay.
Yeah.
Is there any way, and don't have to broach it now, but throwing it out there, a lights out policy, especially on wetland areas, like where times at which the building lights, especially the big ones that are being built, need to be out and things like that. Just throwing it out as an idea, because we're in this.
It's interesting, because
It's
I
in
just
the- it's
read
in
about
there, no?
something
You just-
about,
You just put it in.
It says,
It
but it's
is in
not,
there
it's
as
not
a-
as specific.
It's- okay.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
a
saying where
recommendation
feasible,
that
please
lights-
reduce.
Yeah, reduce as much as.
Yeah,
Some
do-
cities are installing lights out policies for their city buildings.
Okay.
And I can't tell you which ones, but I heard it and jotted it down.
I actually read recently about, there's some big site, and I don't know whether it's a dam or what it is, but they're turning the lights off on it because of migration. So there's like a 2-month period during migration that they're going to have the lights out after a certain period of time. And so, yeah, I understand that, but I'm just not sure how we would enforce it.
Yeah, I don't know, but,
Yeah, something to look into.
and it wouldn't be Concom, it would be a citywide thing, more like the no cutting any trees kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
I think
But-
on your individual application basis, someone usually brings it up,
We usually talk about it, yeah.
but how to go
Are they on
beyond that, I don't know.
timers and, yeah. But that's interesting, I'll look,
Anyway,
to
but
look into
that,
that.
I
That's good, Abby.
was psyched to see that.
Yeah.
But also, if it's just a suggestion, then it's like, oh, people go, screw it, I'll put in my garden, my garden solar lights, and everybody's using them now. And I'm like, the fireflies.
Yeah.
Anyway,
When there are any left.
Okay.
not to mention the big buildings that have the parking garage and such.
Do we
You guys did a nice job, though, thank you.
Thanks.
I know it's,
I
you
did,
know.
we did have one question on the 10, I don't know, 10, 17, 832. I don't know, did you resolve that?
We talked about that a little bit before you got here.
Oh,
But,
okay.
let me punch it again. The ratio.
The ratios,
thing.
yeah.
Well, we talked about also that the wetland protection plan is not something we're following up closely enough with, and I think we can, I mean, it's me and not telling Kate and not really pushing it, but I think what we're gonna find is, I think part of the problem with it is people don't understand it. They don't they're pretty simple in their understanding of what they're trying to do, and they want to get this in, but I think there's a lot of good things in here. This ratio we might find that it's a little high, but it's something that they can ask for relief from, if they can't do it that way. And it was put in here for the sheer fact that people just come in and ask to fill stuff completely or do stuff completely without any kind of offsetting. So it kind of gets to offsetting without creating some automatic, if you do this, you're going to get your permit kind of thing. So it really comes down to us pushing back on this permit site plan idea. And, when an application comes in, Kate, we're going to have to be tougher with them and push back and say, look at this
This isn't
section,
adhering
you need to provide all this, and we can help you with it, or you can hire a wetland scientist.
I think that's awesome, because also we were always asking for planting plans, and it's only half the time we get them, and this is
Right.
all planting
This
right
is
here.
all gonna, if they read this section and they understand it,
Yeah.
then we're gonna get better applications, which is good for both you and the
Yeah.
planning board.
Is there some way that we can put in that a planting plan is required at the time of,
I think it's in there.
Well, it's in here.
is it?
Yeah.
I think just nobody reads, a lot of people read the online instructions rather than.
We should
looking to
include this,
here.
and that's what we should do too.
Oh, this table in the
I
online
don't
instructions?
think
No,
that
the
isn't anywhere in
permit
there.
site plan piece.
Has any of those changes been made, Kate, on the
Saying that the
instructions yet?
planting plan is
the
required as
website.
part of the conditional
Remember the
use
things
permit.
we were gonna add to the website part?
Yep,
Does that
those are up
happen?
on the website.
They are?
So the expression planting plan isn't in the document.
Okay, so you just did a find.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Is it
thinking
on
that
the
that should be under criteria for approval, actually, is that a planting plan needs to be part of a conditional use permit application.
But not every site has a planting plan,
It doesn't need a planting
Or
plan?
applicable?
We do ask.
where applicable. I get, but how is that, I don't know, I feel like that's an application requirement,
Yeah.
submission
Okay.
requirement,
Okay.
rather than an approval requirement.
Okay,
Is
that's
that in
fine.
here, or is that on the website?
I think
like
it's in the
instructions?
permit site plans, maybe not specifically as a planting plan, but it has ratios for
Yeah,
planting.
it didn't ask me for a planting plan.
No,
Do we have anywhere?
so that's the other thing, the permit site plans. Oh, this is. Oh, that's the problem. I told you the wrong thing. This is in the permit site plans for the wetland protection plan. So this is all under the wetland protection plan section for the mobile home park that uses it. So that's what those ratios are. So we track their impacts. They have to create these
just for
offsets.
Hillcrest.
It's just for the.
So those
the park.
ratios apply to nothing
Yeah,
else we do?
they do. I was thinking of the other piece where we have the,
I was thinking, I never think I've ever enforced that.
I know.
no wonder why. But we did have, at the section I was talking about, the information on the application requirements, and then 1017.22, where it talks about a temporary or permanent alteration, and then as the alterations get bigger, we ask for more.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be a little,
More than 250 square feet of impact,
yep.
yep, and the,
I think we have to make sure that the applications fit that. That's the section I
Well,
was
then,
thinking
should we put that under application requirements here?
of. No, because the permit site plan is separate. It's for the mobile home park. The application requirements talk about if you have a small impact, you have to show so much information in your permit plan. The bigger impact, you have to show, as your impact increases, you have more information to provide.
But that 10-10-17-22 is what you're talking about, right? That's
Yep.
not under the,
it's under application requirements.
it's just under condition,
Yeah,
just
it's
general
under application
application
requirements,
requirements.
yeah.
But not specifically for the mobile home thing.
No,
For any,
no, but the table you were talking about earlier
yeah.
with the ratios,
But
that's
so I
under
think
the
what
permit
Allison
site
is
plans.
saying is are you saying putting the vegetation plan,
Well, I'm just saying, putting a planting plan on here somewhere,
Okay,
so that people know that it's
under 10-10-17,
22,
So it would
make
be-
it number 4
It
or
would be
something.
21, like 1 through 9.
and so make it number
Right,
10?
that was where I was thinking.
Yeah, number 10,
10, planting
or
plan.
somewhere in here.
Provide a planting plan.
I thought it
Or
was like
applicable.
advised, but you guys, in your edits, made it required.
Showing
but maybe not.
species and spacing.
Related to that, is there anywhere
Where
we
appropriate.
suggest or provide a list of native plants or adequate plantings that
We
can
could-
be used within there? Because like, we also want to be helpful.
Yeah.
Like, okay, provide a planting plant. Unless you are a gardener or a passionate person about this, people have no idea what they can
Right.
put in there.
We could put a link or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Allison, you had a couple, right?
I do.
Yeah.
That would be awesome, yeah.
I think we'd put a link to our website and then keep it updated there instead of trying to keep it.
Yeah, yeah, but at least a link that, like, helping people
Otherwise, they have to talk
identify
to
what they
a
can put in there.
landscaper. People don't want to pay money for that, and, whatever.
So helping them do it on their own.
But the,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah, sure.
I-
Yeah, if you want.
And I was just going to say before you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
so we need to meet with the planning board, right?
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about, is what the next steps are.
Want to do that, and then we can open it up for
Sure.
when you go. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was that you'd meet as a working group, then meet as a commission. We can incorporate the changes and send them out. You guys will know what we said we were going to change, so you can review it. But do you think the Conservation Commission needs another opportunity at it, or do you want to send it to everybody and maybe talk about it either at a meeting or set up a special meeting, or you think it'll be ready to go to set up a meeting with the planning board and a work session between the Conservation Commission and the planning board? Because ultimately, that's where we want to get to, is a work session with the planning board, with everybody on the Conservation Commission at least happy or happy enough with the
I would
changes.
like this to be available at a Conservation Commission meeting.
Yeah.
At the end, under other business, we can just touch base and say, this is the plan that we are moving forward with.
Yeah,
And I don't know, is
And
a
the
vote
next-
required too, so we get everyone's consensus before we, not necessary?
not necessarily, but you could.
I agree with Allison, I think it should be at a official meeting
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
end.
Because not everybody's not here.
Right.
Yeah, we
we'll
certainly
get
would announce.
we'll get
certainly would
the
announce
edited
that.
version, because I wasn't writing
But-
fast
Yeah.
enough.
At that point-
And lift it.
Sorry.
No.
At that point, you could ask people what they wanted to do. You know, we think it's ready to take to a work session with the planning board, but if everybody didn't get a chance to review it in a work session, we could do another work session if people would prefer that, or we can go to the planning board and have a work session with them, and so you can let the commission decide, and then the vote would be.
Okay.
Because I would
Someone
like
could
to
make a
go,
motion. I say, let's set up a work session with the planning board, and then.
I would like to go to the work session with the planning board being united.
Yeah.
I would like all of us to
Yeah.
agree with
Yeah,
what's
for
been
sure.
written.
Yeah.
So that would mean we need to talk about maybe some of the ideas that the planning board had ahead of time, because then we'd be more prepared.
If you have some.
So does the planning board have ideas about
Well,
this?
about
Probably.
criteria or coming
Yes.
up
No,
with more
no,
standards to
I think they're
follow.
going to bring them up in a work session with you,
And we just,
unless you
We
want,
react.
unless you know I don't really know exactly what they are.
I don't know
I've had
exactly what they are
conversations
either,
in
it's
the
just
past,
that
but-
they,
I don't know exactly either, but I
think
know
that's
that
the
Rick
idea of the work
Gelman has a
session.
problem with the way that we make decisions.
Well, I think their concern was that there's too much gray area in the criteria for approval, and he, I think, wants to try to, and that's where I think you're
We're-
gonna have to work it out, is what.
Yeah, but I
how
think
gray
that
can it
this
be, and-
actually is setting more limits, and it's more understandable, and it was like, these are the things that you need to comply with.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted more limits, this is,
But they need to understand that we have to consider things like the stormwater is being treated. It was not being treated previously.
Right.
So you
How do
had
you-
all kinds of
yeah.
pollution
Yeah.
going in here. Now, is it of value to do that? If it is of value, then we can allow somebody to build a building in the 50-foot buffer as long as they're not extending it further or
And that's-
whatever.
I think that's exactly the issue that he has. It's not explicitly stated where you can and can't sort of.
And we
be
don't want
flexible.
to
On
state
purpose.
that.
And if you state it,
On
then
purpose.
you're saying,
That's
well,
right.
then you can go 50 feet to the buffer.
Right.
And everybody does it. And
Well, then
how
it's
do
no
you-
longer a buffer. It's
no
just
longer
like,
a
it's
buffer,
a
yeah.
Right.
free
That's what you're
building
gonna have
zone.
to explain to them. I've tried to explain it, and I think you'll
Hit
get where
the
you
wall
get.
as well, yeah.
You'll get where you get. Well, I think he understands it, but maybe he has some ideas on how to make it strong that you guys will be okay with. I don't know. But so that step would happen after the commission votes to do that. The commission might vote to do another work session, they might vote to go to the planning board, but whatever they vote, that'll happen. Then we'll set up something with the planning board and the conservation commission as a work session. And then I think probably, if you can get to a point where you both agree on a document, then you could recommend that to the city council for changes.
So we'll see this at the next meeting, in the conscom?
Do we want to do this for June?
I don't know, if we can get it done.
If
we'll
you
do it.
can.
If you have some time. If not, then we can
Eight,
put
I'm sure you
it
have
till
plenty of
July.
time.
Oh, my goodness.
Totally. Yeah.
She hasn't read my survey yet. She
I'm
can't.
we
just
could- there
thinking
might
the
be some-
agenda.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
very
I need
long.
to
We just
leave.
added to it tonight.
Would you like to come up and, do you have thoughts? If you'd like to come up. I will hear from others.
Bye, Sam.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Just invites me in and then leaves you.
She had to
So-
go.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Brader, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. I thought at the beginning of, where you list off, this is the environmental protection standards, that you could put in a section that's called tree protection or whatever you want to include in there that is outside of the realm of the wetlands. Because you also include earth product removal and placement, and then there's a whole section on water. So that's what I thought about. I thought that the definitions that you use in the little chart that you made are great, but I think they need to be clearly defined, as you talked about, and I think they need to be used throughout the paperwork. I think it flips between wetland buffer and limited cut and no cut. I think those two terminologies should be used. So however you want to define them, but that's what should be used throughout the whole paperwork. So that these two things are clearly defined. And then when you read through here, you can look and say, okay, that's the 0 to 50, and this is the 50 to 100. Species list. Okay. So, one of the things that you talk about in 10, 10, 14, 21, and 10, 10, 17.25 is that grass can't be used in the 100-foot wetland buffer. And it has to be, because it's not a vegetative cover. And I think that we see a lot of that.
No, I don't think we said that we couldn't use grass. I thought we said that we couldn't have lawn.
Okay?
Okay, and we're defining lawn as something that is maintained, whereas you can have grass. It gets to 5 inches, it falls over, it's fine. But, you
Okay.
know, it's called eco-grass, so it's
Okay.
different than a lawn.
Okay, so that's how I understood that, was that was grass. Lawn and grass are the same to me. In 1010, 1610, you talk about filling and dredging, and some of the places that we've seen, they're although they've been given permission to be in the 50-foot buffer, they're going to be filling and dredging in those areas, and that's very concerning. So I think that when we talk about, you just talked about this earlier, that sometimes the cleanup of the water running, into the wetlands and into the water source is an important thing, but there also needs to be considered the filling and dredging that's going to go along with putting that building in the 50-foot buffer. So that's a whole picture, and I don't know how to fix that, but it's just
Well,
something else to be
that's why
thought
we
about.
have the erosion measures, the erosion control measures.
Right.
And then once we have the whole, stormwater treatment in, that's, should be taking care of the whole thing. I mean,
I'm just saying that if you're going to put a building in a 50-foot buffer, the 50 to 100-foot buffer, when you go to dig that hole and you put in 12 foot of soil, that's going to have an impact on the other side on the 50 to 0 buffer, the 0 to 50 buffer.
Well, that should be shown on the plan. So
Right.
That's all part of their.
I'm just saying that that's part of that whole picture, is including that. I did want to talk about 10.10.17.22, number 2, and that's the highway methodology workbook supplement. And every time I've read one of these presented by an environmental person, I have to remember that they're being paid in most cases by the development that wants to go in. And I didn't know if it would be helpful for the Conservation Commission to look at those, because I find it's the most interesting fluff I ever get to read when I read all of this, is what the environmental people write up about these pieces of property that are believed to be wetlands that can be run over in any way, shape, or form. So I didn't know if it would be helpful to read how those function and values are derived, and then create some actual Conservation Commission rules and regulations that utilize those, but they are your own rules and regulations. So I think what the federal one does is that it's so general that the amount of fluff that you get to read is amazing. Sometimes I'm just in awe. You're taking down a whole forest, and when they fluff it up, it's like, really? I feel good about this. But I think that the wetlands function and value is a really important piece for the Army Corps of Engineers. But I think when you look at smaller areas of land, like what we have here in Portsmouth or in any city, that's written so generally that the amount of fluff that gets put through should be, I think that could be removed, and you could create your own thing. Let's see what else I have.
So when you say things like that could be removed and you could put your own things, can you make suggestions? Because saying this can be made better
I
and
can.
asking somebody else to do it isn't constructive. Coming with suggestions
Oh, I can.
is helpful.
I'll be happy to. I think a lot of times we see parking lots going into the 100-foot buffer, and that I think we need to differentiate between green space and open space. Although open space is defined to include green space, I think a lot of times open space is counted as the big impervious parking areas where you can sit with people and stuff like that. And to me, those are two different things.
that's
Green
part of a
space-
zoning ordinance that we don't have control over, though.
It's coming up to planning board. They're working on other ordinances. So that crosses over into one that's on the planning board. And I think that is something that may need to be discussed at your meeting with the planning board.
Well, we totally agree that we don't like the fact that they can pave an area to their building that's a wider entrance, and that's open space
Right.
that the public can use.
I think green
Yeah,
space and
no,
open
I
space should
agree,
be
but
differentiated.
that's what the planning board's trying to
Okay.
do.
You have a typo on 10.10.17.50, number 4, lawn maintained is not acceptable. It says in, it should be is. I figured you would catch that, but.
Where are you?
10.10.17, number 50, number 4. There's no
There's a
pages.
third.
It's just, it says maintain lawn in not an acceptable ground cover. It should say is. Yep, that's just a little thing that I saw.
Oh,
Somewhere
okay,
there's
I
a
see,
paragraph,
yes,
there's a
thank you.
comma necessary too, and I don't know where that is now.
I don't know that wetlands are differentiated on Map Geo, but whenever I look at property, I always go right to Map Geo, and you can put in, you can ask for themes, zoning, you can ask for the overlay districts and all of that, but I don't know that wetlands are there, and that might be a place where you could put your idea that you had of how people can look at when they buy property if they have wetlands.
But
It
isn't
doesn't
that
have
part
all
of
the, doesn't have
that's
all.
part of the grant, because we're going to
Right, so that's
not accurate.
delineate them.
So it's currently there under the themes there's a toggle on-off button for wetlands, but they'll be updated soon, but they are up there,
Oh, there are there, okay.
yeah.
I think what you were talking about notifying buyers about wetlands, I think that would be on a state land notification. And people could be, that website that you talked about, I have a guest speaker coming this weekend, and I'd be happy to share the information. It's Christian, God, I'm so terrible with names. But anyway, she's coming to a meeting that I'm organizing, and she's going to talk to us about how we can address our waterfront property to be more resilient, and that there are organizations that can come to your property. I don't know if they go anywhere. This is in Dover, so I don't know if they go throughout the
Howard?
Seacoast.
Kirsten Howard?
Yes. So there's some programs around, and that might be on you talked about putting that on the Conservation Commission or places where people can learn about how to take care of their wetlands, I'm sorry. So that might be interesting for you. You guys were talking about on 10/10/17/50, number 9, about the trees. New Hampshire DES has a point system for trees, because I counted and measured trees on a piece of property that I wasn't supposed to be on. But it was interesting to find out how each tree has a different value, and how the amount of trees that were there actually fell into a protected criteria, but they were able to pay their way out of it, so that those will be taken away. But that does exist.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah,
We know.
New Hampshire DES, so.
Yep. Shoreline.
it's pretty watered down.
I mean, those are things that, yeah, it is. But I think that's it. I think you guys did a great job. This was my first look at it, but thank you for taking the time to do it. Thank you.
I would just say, just after hearing what Liz said, one of your first comments was about defining or trying to pull in the definition of limited cut area, or just it's too many words throughout that say limited cut and buffer all over the place. Maybe in the beginning where wetland buffer and the no-cut vegetated buffer strip is first mentioned under 10.10.14.23, what if we put in parentheses after no-cut/vegetated buffer strips, in parentheses, see table 10.1018.21, or see definition? Because then it jumps to the table that defines.
Yeah, I think that's
Could
great.
have somewhere in the document or at the end of the document that defines wetland buffer,
And we do.
limited cut.
We have it all.
Also-
And if it's
Separate
bolded,
article.
it's in the definition section,
Separate.
so.
It's in Article 15, and this is
I
10.
think maybe at the beginning, we could, if you.
We could
I-
cite.
I mean,
I
people
was
that read a
reading,
zoning ordinance.
I was
they-
reading a website for building requirements or something for a town, and they, at the very top, they say, see the definition page at the end of this for all definition, and I was like, I went right to it, I read that, and then went back and read it, and I
that's
thought it
what
was
I
just,
would suggest.
I thought it
Because
was
know it's in
really,
there. It's just like, oh,
So
where do
right
I
on the
find
first
it?
page.
Yeah.
yeah, just like at the
That's the
top before they
definitions, Article
get
15.
into it. I thought that was very effective. That might have just been me.
Does, some of the articles have sections at the end that have specific definitions for that specific article,
And then there's a
Yeah,
definition
exactly.
section.
And then there's-
Globally for the whole ordinance, yeah.
for the whole ordinance. So it's just something to keep in mind for, some of the things you talked about was the pesticides and the
We
limited
had
cut
just,
area.
we'll use the same
The
definition.
same
It's all in the definition section.
the
All
definition.
all the bolded definitions in this article are all in the
in
Article
that.
15.
Is limited cut in there?
Not yet.
Not yet, but you're going to add that.
That's the new one.
All right. All right, I'm going to go, and you guys can talk.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. I thought you did, I'll say it again, thought you guys did a great job.
Well, we'll put it together, we'll try to get it on this meeting, and
Yep.
if we can't, we'll get it on the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And then you'll let the planning board know?
Yep.
when we're-
Definitely.
Do we have to have a vote or anything? So we're good. Okay, good.
I think we should be all set.
So the only thing I want